Japan's energy security, nuclear power versus renewable energies. Japan depends on foreign energy imports for over 90% of its energy production. This is due to its geographic location and geological characteristics. In order to enhance energy security, Japan needs to find ways to increase domestic energy production. Between 1973 and 2011, the country focused on promoting and increasing its nuclear power production. However, since the Fukushima disaster in 2011, domestic production has instead relied heavily on renewable resources such as hydro, solar, and wind power. A brief overview of the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster. A magnitude 9 earthquake hit Japan and caused a tsunami. The earthquake cut power to the Fukushima nuclear plant, triggering the backup power supply, which consisted of 14 generators. The safety mechanisms in place held up against the seismic activity. However, the tsunami floodwaters damaged the generators so severely they shut down. The reactors within the plant overheated and created a nuclear meltdown. This caused the government to implement an evacuation zone of up to 30 kilometers surrounding the plant, displacing nearly 150,000 people and creating billions of dollars in compensation and cleanup costs. The cleanup is expected to last decades. Prior to 2011, Japan had 55 commercial reactors, which contributed to 28% of total produced energy supply. Additionally, nuclear energy has increasingly supported Japan's electricity needs between 1973 and 2011, reaching its all-time high at nearly 35% in the late 1990s. A mandatory shutdown of all 55 reactors brought nuclear production to a grinding halt. Required inspections and maintenance have been carried out on 26 reactors. However, only 5 have been cleared to restart, and of those, only 2 have actually been restarted. This is largely due to public skepticism. Local populations do not want reactors restarted, especially those near fault lines. This resistance is interesting since the Fukushima plant proved stable through the seismic activity during the earthquake. It was the floodwaters that ultimately caused the meltdown. As a result, nuclear power production has contributed to less than 2% of Japan's total energy supplies. Despite public concern, the Japanese government has stayed committed to its nuclear-powered future. This is largely due to the program's ability to supply steady energy with nearly zero greenhouse gas emissions. Additionally, the power plants already exist. They only require updates and enhanced safety protocol. Japan has invested a lot of research in fast breed and light water reactors, which could help to increase the efficiency and production of its nuclear power plants. Although there are many benefits to restarting the nuclear power program, there are also many drawbacks. The Japanese government may continue to hit walls with restarts to the large lack of local support, as well as the age of some reactors. The Nuclear Regulation Authority, an organization created in the aftermath of Fukushima with the sole purpose of population and environment protection, has set stringent new guidelines for nuclear facilities. Reactors now must be replaced at 40 years with the opportunity of a one-time 20-year extension. However, the extension must be applied for before the 40-year mark is reached. Many reactors have reached or are near the 40-year limit. This could pose problems and incur substantial expenses for nuclear facilities around the country. Additionally, radioactive waste from nuclear power plants poses a problem for Japan. It has been shipping to countries like France for temporary storage for years. Japan needs deep disposal sites for past and future waste. Finding a location for this disposal has proved challenging. Furthermore, while nuclear power is produced domestically, Japan still needs uranium from foreign countries. Uranium also requires enrichment, and at present Japan is capable of only enriching less than 20% of its needs. Lastly, future disasters could have major impacts on the country. As was witnessed after Fukushima, Japan became almost entirely dependent on foreign energy supplies. By focusing primarily on nuclear power, Japan would be putting its energy security at great risk again. Renewable energies. Between 1990 and 2011, Japan's renewable energy sector remained relatively stagnant. From 1973 to 1990, renewables accounted for roughly less than 2.5% of total energy supply. In 1990, the figure reached 3.4%, where it maintained with only slight fluctuations until 2012. During this time, hydropower generated 40% of renewable supply. followed by biomass and geothermal with 36% and 17% respectively. Solar and wind made up less than 5% combined. After the Fukushima disaster, Japan became increasingly dependent on imported energy sources. In 2012, there was a spike in renewable energy output, reflecting the nation's attempt to offset the fossil fuel dependence created by the halt of the nuclear program. The graph on this slide shows the drastic increases in all sources of Japan's renewables, contributing to total energy supply after 2011. In 2015, renewables accounted for 16.9% of total electricity generation. Research focused on the application of renewable sources has paid off for Japan. Currently, they are the first and only nation to use seawater pumped storage hydropower. The plant was completed in 1990 and is located in Okinawa. This plant has contributed to Japan's pumped hydro storage capacities, which are the highest installed per peak demand of all IEA countries. With the ability to use seawater for pumped storage hydropower, the island nation could significantly increase its energy security. Japan's continued dedication to research in renewables has and will ensure its overall advancement and diversification in energy production. Additionally, renewables emit zero greenhouse gases and the production is entirely domestic. Since the increase in renewable energy, specifically the production of solar power, Japan has realized its power sources are not fully optimized to account for variable energy supplies. Because solar and wind energy is dependent on weather, its outputs vary. Japan's energy-producing companies have in some ways monopolized the country's power supply. This means, in order to make necessary updates to fully maximize renewable sources, these companies will need to make updates to the power sources. At present, there isn't much commercial incentive for them to do so. Additionally, Japan's lack of land space for solar and wind farm has created the need for floating solar farms and offshore wind farms. These come with a higher price for installment and maintenance than standard wind and solar farms. Japan's production outlook for 2030, adjusted post-Fukushima, shows a higher percentage contribution from renewables than nuclear. This is a complete turnaround compared to its pre-Fukushima outlook. The Fukushima disaster exposed Japan's increasing dependency on nuclear power and the energy insecurity a nuclear disaster can create. Investment in renewable energy since 2011 has paid off, and if trends continue, we'll have steady increases in production through at least 2030. Risk and skepticism associated with Japan's nuclear facilities makes pursuing nuclear energy less advantageous for Japan.